The air was thick with the scent of fear as the lights flickered in the room, casting long shadows on the walls. The boy's gasps echoed off the stone walls as his body trembled in pain. His once pristine uniform was now stained, a testament to the violence he had just endured. "Please, no more," he pleaded, his voice broken. His limbs were chained to the floor, each movement causing the chains to rattle, a constant reminder of his helplessness. Blood dripped from his lip, staining his already torn shirt. After that, 5 years earlier, Seoul, South Korea morning. The early morning sun crept through the windows of Taekook University, casting a golden glow over the sprawling campus. The school was a prestigious institution, known for breeding the elite of Korean society. Power, status, and wealth were all cultivated here, along with a brutal hierarchy that only the strongest survived. Kim Tae-young, the heir to a vast conglomerate, walked through the campus with an air of authority. His mere presence made students part like the Red Sea. At just 25, he had it all, the looks, the brains, and the ruthless ambition to match. But it wasn't just his wealth or status that commanded respect. It was his unwavering confidence. A quiet, unspoken dominance that made everyone around him either admire or fear him. And then we see Taekook University Orientation Hall, first day of semester. The hall was packed with fresh faces, new students, full of hope and excitement, sitting in neat rows. The energy was electric, a mix of nervousness and anticipation. This was a moment they had all been waiting for. But the moment the 5 alphas walked in, the atmosphere shifted. Tae-young was at the forefront. His step was steady, his posture perfect as he made his way to the front of the room. The crowd parted instinctively as if they knew that the world revolved around him. Behind him stood Jungkook, the second lead. Jungkook's presence was not as striking as Tae-young's, but there was something unsettling about him. His dark eyes glinted with a mix of malice and boredom as he surveyed the students. He was not here to impress them, he was here to observe. Jungkook had the face of an angel, yet his eyes spoke of darkness, of things unsaid, things better left forgotten. He had a reputation that was feared across the campus. It wasn't just his looks that made people wary, it was the unpredictability that came with him. And we see, it didn't take long for the freshmen to realize that Taekook University was not a place for the faint of heart. As the orientation began, students were called onto the stage to answer questions and complete embarrassing tasks. It was a test of survival. When it came to Jungkook, the Omega student who was just 18, the atmosphere changed. He was calm, unnervingly so. His eyes locked with Tae-young's as he stood on stage, almost daring him to make a move. Tae-young, used to having everyone fall at his feet, smirked. "Scholarship Omega, huh?" he said, his voice smooth. "You're too delicate for this place." But Hanul didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled slightly and said, "And yet I'm still here." It was a quiet challenge, one that ignited something in Tae-young. He stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. "Maybe you should come to my room tonight. I'll show you what true power feels like." The entire room was silent, watching in rapt attention. But before anyone could react, Jian, with an unexpected speed, slapped Tae-young across the face. The sound was sharp, echoing through the hall like a gunshot. The crowd gasped in shock, but Tae-young didn't move, his hand hovering over his cheek where Jian's palm had left its mark. But Jungkook, standing off to the side, couldn't help but chuckle. He knew Tae-young's pride had been wounded, and for the first time, he found himself interested in down-market Omega. Tae-young's dilemma. After the slap, Tae-young was not the same. His friends noticed it immediately. Normally, he would have let the incident slide, but not this time. There was something about Jian that had made him feel something. He couldn't quite place it, but it stirred a curiosity in him, a dangerous one. And his friends say, of course, noticed this change too. He leaned in one evening as they sat together, the dim lights casting long shadows on the table between them, and then asked from Kim, "You're obsessed with him, aren't you?" Then Hyeonim Omega Boy asked, his voice almost teasing, but his eyes sharp. Tae-young didn't respond immediately. He was staring into his drink, lost in thought. "He's different. I want to break him." After that, we see the neon lights of the bar flickered as Jungkook wiped down the counter, his movements precise, almost mechanical. His face was a mask of indifference, but his mind was elsewhere, always calculating, always plotting. The sound of clinking glasses and low conversations filled the air, but Jungkook barely registered it. Tonight he had a plan. He had learned long ago that control was everything. At the university, power was wielded like a weapon, and Jungkook, despite his quiet presence, knew exactly how to use it. He didn't need to be the loudest voice in the room. No, his strength lay in his ability to wait, to strike when others least expected it. A figure entered the bar, and Jungkook's eyes narrowed. It was Taeyoung, the one who had everything, money, status, and the world at his feet. But tonight, Jungkook wasn't going to let him forget that he too had power. Taeyoung approached the counter, his smirk never wavering. The moment he stepped into the light, it was clear that he was used to being the center of attention. His presence was magnetic, pulling eyes in his direction. But Jungkook remained impassive, not offering a single glance at him. Jungkook, Taeyoung's voice was smooth, but there was an underlying edge to it. Still slumming it here? I thought you had better things to do. Jungkook's eyes flickered up at him, emotionless. Maybe I do, but unlike some people, I don't need to hide behind a name to get by. Taeyoung chuckled, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the counter. You always were so full of yourself. Jungkook stood up straight, placing the cloth aside. And you've always been a prince in your own little world. Too bad it's about to crumble. Taeyoung's eyes narrowed, a flicker of annoyance flashing across his face. Keep talking, Jungkook. Maybe I'll enjoy putting you in your place. Jungkook leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. You think you control everything, but one thing you'll never control is me. His lips curled into a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I'll make sure of that. Then Taeyoung's jaw clenched. He had always been untouchable, the king of his domain. But Jungkook's calm demeanor, the way he spoke, was beginning to irk him. The tension between them was palpable, but Taeyoung wasn't one to back down. You really think you can outplay me? Taeyoung scoffed, his gaze darkening. You're nothing but a shadow. You'll never stand in the light like me. Jungkook remained unfazed, his eyes cold as ice. We'll see about that. Just then, Taeyoung did something unexpected. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a wad of bills, tossing them onto the counter in front of Jungkook with a careless flick of his wrist. Here's a tip, he said, the words dripping with condescension. Maybe it'll help you get by. You know, for when you're cleaning up after real people. Jungkook's grip on the counter tightened, but he didn't flinch. Instead, his smile grew darker, colder. Funny, he said, his voice laced with venom. I thought I was cleaning up after someone who's about to lose everything. Scene shift from to campus, we see. Later that night, the atmosphere on campus was thick with the buzz of whispered rumors and hushed conversations. The tension between Taeyoung and Jungkook had reached its peak, and neither was willing to back down. But as the clock struck midnight, a sound broke the silence, a scream that sent a ripple of panic through the halls. It didn't take long for the body to be found. The lifeless form of a student, their blood staining the campus grounds, sent shockwaves through the university. The police were called and chaos erupted. But amidst the confusion, one thing became clear. Someone had died, and the consequences would be far-reaching. Jungkook sat in his dimly lit room, his legs casually draped over the edge of his bed, his mind far away. The door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside without asking. Jungkook's gaze flickered up, his sharp eyes taking in the figure who had entered. You know, Jungkook started, his voice low and steady. It's not polite to enter without permission. The person didn't respond, stepping into the room with a sense of nervousness that Jungkook could almost taste in the air. There was something oddly familiar about them. Jungkook didn't ask who they were, though. It was irrelevant. Whoever they were, they had come to him for something. But what? I don't know who else to turn to, the figure stammered, looking at Jungkook with wide eyes full of fear. I'm being followed. They know about me. They're watching me. Jungkook's expression remained impassive, but the words of the stranger sparked a flicker of interest within him. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Who's after you? The figure shook their head frantically. I don't know. I think it's someone on campus. Please help me. Jungkook studied them for a long moment. Then his lips twisted into a cold, cruel smile. Help? You think I help people? Before the figure could respond, Jungkook's door slammed open, and another person stepped into the room. A malevolent presence entered, and Jungkook's attention shifted instantly. The stranger turned to look at the newcomer with wide, fearful eyes. Leave, now, Jungkook said, his voice colder than ice. The figure, still trembling, backed out of the room without a word, leaving Jungkook to deal with the real threat now standing before him. After that, we see the courtyard buzzed with activity as students milled around, their voices a constant murmur in the background. Taeyoung, the epitome of power and control, walked through the crowd with an effortless grace. His every step demanded attention. As usual, people parted for him, eyes following his every move. But today, there was something different in the air. The rumors of his growing obsession with Lee Hanul had spread like wildfire across the campus, and everyone was eager to see what would happen next. Taehyung didn't care for the gossip. He was used to being the center of attention, and right now, his focus was elsewhere. But as he reached the center of the courtyard, his eyes locked onto Jian, who stood across from him. There was something challenging in Jian's gaze, something daring, and Taehyung, ever the predator, couldn't resist. Taehyung smirked. I never stop when I see something I want. Jian's eyes flashed, a quiet challenge in the air. Without warning, Hanul reached out and pulled Taehyung into a kiss. It wasn't soft or hesitant. It was forceful, a challenge, a demand for submission. John didn't even flinch. His eyes, cold and calculating, remained locked on as the kiss lingered for a moment. But before Taehyung could pull away, Jian's hand shot out, slapping Taehyung across the face with a resounding crack. The sound echoed across the campus. But Taehyung didn't back down. His cheek reddened, but Jungkook didn't show any sign of fear. I thought you were supposed to be the king here, he said, his voice low, a mockery of Taehyung's supposed control. It seems you've lost your bite. Taehyung's smile remained cruel and detached. You don't know who you're dealing with, Omega. He turned and walked away without another word, leaving he is standing in the middle of the courtyard, a red handprint on his face. Later that night, Jungkook's room, we see he was sitting by his window, staring out into the night, when he heard the soft click of his door opening again. He didn't look up, he knew who it was. Kim Taehyung. The air in the room thickened the moment Taehyung entered, his presence suffocating. There was a stillness to him, a dangerous calm. Jungkook didn't move, though his mind raced. He knew what was coming. Are you going to ignore me again, or do you finally want to face me? Taehyung's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Jungkook tilted his head slightly, his lips curving into a small, almost amused smile. I don't need to face anyone, especially not you. Taehyung stepped closer, his eyes narrowing as he observed Jungkook with an unsettling intensity. The space between them closed, but instead of words, Taehyung moved with the swiftness of a predator, grabbing Jungkook by the collar and pulling him into a kiss. It was intense, unexpected, and the sheer force of it left Jungkook momentarily stunned. But only for a moment. He didn't pull away. Instead, he deepened the kiss, his hands gripping Taehyung's shoulders, his fingers digging into the fabric of his clothes. The kiss was raw, filled with power and dominance. Neither of them backed down. When the kiss finally broke, Taehyung pulled away, his breath steady despite the tension. Jungkook's lips curled into a satisfied smile, his dark eyes gleaming with something dangerous. You're a fool if you think this changes anything. Taehyung's gaze hardened, and for the first time, something flickered in his eyes, anger, maybe regret, or perhaps something more. But whatever it was, he didn't show it. Instead, he turned and walked out of the room without a word, leaving Jungkook to ponder the strange turn of events. The bass of the music pulsed through the walls of the elite underground nightclub, Nox. Strobe lights flickered, casting brief, disjointed images of bodies moving in rhythm, some desperate, some hungry. In a secluded corner cloaked in shadows and velvet ropes, Kim Taehyung sat, drink in hand, watching the crowd with a predator's eye. And then he saw him, Jungkook, dressed in black like sin itself, cutting through the club like a silent threat. Their eyes met across the crowd, and for a moment everything around them blurred. A smirk tugged at Taehyung's lips. He signaled the bartender. Send him a drink. Top shelf. And tell him, the king is calling. Moments later, Jungkook appeared, stepping into Taeyoung's private room like he owned it. You always did like dramatic entrances, he said, eyeing the velvet couches and gold-tinted lighting. Taeyoung handed him a glass, his voice smooth. You showed up, didn't you? Guess you like drama too. Jungkook looked at the drink, the amber liquid swirling in the glass, then back at Taeyoung. You sure you want me drinking this? Taeyoung leaned in, his tone dangerously calm. Scared? Jungkook took the glass and sipped. His expression didn't change, but something unreadable flickered behind his eyes. Never. They drank, the conversation slipping into a quiet game of glances and veiled threats. Taeyoung inched closer, his voice dropping. You talk a lot, Jungkook, but actions speak louder. Before Jungkook could reply, Taeyoung's hand slipped behind his neck, and their lips met again, this time softer, calculated, manipulative. Jungkook didn't resist. He kissed back with the same quiet violence. And then Taeyoung's phone rang. The shrill tone shattered the moment. Annoyed, Taeyoung pulled away, yanking his phone from his pocket. The name on the screen made the blood drain from his face. Appa, he answered, voice tight. Yes. The voice on the other end was low, urgent. Taeyoung, there's been an accident. It's your uncle. He's dead. For a moment, everything inside Taeyoung stilled. The glass slipped from his hand, shattering against the floor. Jungkook straightened, watching as Taeyoung's face went pale. Dead? Taeyoung whispered, almost to himself. Yes, they think it was deliberate. Stay where you are. I'll send someone. Taeyoung ended the call without a word. His jaw clenched, fingers twitching at his side. Jungkook stood, eyeing him with quiet curiosity. What happened? Taeyoung didn't respond. His eyes were far away now, his earlier arrogance replaced by something hollow. I have to go, he said, moving toward the exit with mechanical steps. The campus was in chaos. The sun barely peeked over the horizon, but students had already gathered in trembling clusters, murmuring in hushed, frantic voices. Yellow tape cordoned off a section near the east garden, the same path most students took on their way to the dorms. Another body had been found, a girl this time, ordinary, nameless to most, but no less real. Her lifeless form lay sprawled against the garden wall, her mouth parted as if frozen in the middle of a scream. Her ID badge was still clipped to her blouse. Second year, literature major. Regular. It was the fourth death this semester. This wasn't a coincidence anymore. It was a pattern. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Campus security hovered nearby, clearly overwhelmed. Fear wrapped around the student body like a chokehold. Whispers of a serial killer spread like poison. Inside the main building, Taeyoung stood at the top of the staircase, looking down at the scene below with unreadable eyes. His uncle's death still sat heavy in his bones, but this was something else. Something darker. He glanced to the side, where a nervous student whispered to their friend. I heard she was seen talking to Jungkook last night. Shut up, the other hissed. Do you want to disappear too? Taeyoung's jaw tightened. In the distance, Jungkook leaned against a wall under the archway near the library, arms crossed, eyes following everything like a ghost, in plain sight. People avoided looking at him, but he didn't care. He watched, and he waited. Later that night, Jungkook was in his room again, seated at his desk, tapping a pen against his notebook absent-mindedly. He wasn't writing. He was thinking, processing. The deaths weren't random, not to him. And he had noticed something no one else had, the eyes. The way the victims had been found with their eyes wide open, as if they'd seen something terrifying. He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes for a moment. Click! The sound of his door unlocking pulled him back. His eyes snapped open. I didn't say you could come in, he said coldly, but the figure ignored him. A shadow stepped through the doorway. Tall, slender, wearing all black. Hood pulled up. Jungkook stood. Who the hell? Before he could finish, the door slammed shut behind the stranger, and suddenly, they were on him. Shoving him against the wall, gripping his throat, not tight enough to choke, but firm enough to control. Jungkook didn't panic, his eyes narrowed. So, you're the third player. The figure leaned in, breath brushing against his ear. You think you're untouchable, Jungkook? The voice was low, unfamiliar. laced with venom. You think no one can break you? A hand slid down his chest. Jungkook grabbed it, trying to twist free, but the stranger pinned him harder, pressing him further against the cold wall. I should ruin you, the figure whispered, voice almost trembling with restrained fury. Right here, right now. Jungkook let out a breathless laugh, sharp and mocking. Try me. The figure's hand clenched into a fist against Jungkook's chest, but just as quickly they pulled away, stepping back into the shadows. I'll be back, the stranger murmured, then vanished into the night like smoke. Jungkook stood still, his pulse racing, lips curling into a twisted smile. So that's how you want to play, he whispered. The morning air was sharp, biting at exposed skin as the campus slowly stirred to life. But Kim Tae-young had been awake long before dawn. He hadn't slept. He couldn't. Not after what he saw last night, those strange dark marks curling up Jungkook's neck like bruises or bites. Tae-young had memorized them. The way Jungkook's collar had shifted when he moved, just enough to reveal something that didn't belong. Something someone had done to him. And now he was following him, like a shadow, like a predator. Jungkook walked ahead, oblivious or maybe just pretending to be. He moved with that same calm arrogance, books tucked under his arm, earbuds in, head slightly bowed, as he walked through the narrow garden trail behind the campus dorms. Tae-young kept his distance, steps measured, eyes sharp. He watched every movement, every glance Jungkook threw over his shoulder. Jungkook paused by a tree, pretending to check his phone. Tae-young ducked behind the statue near the philosophy hall. He waited. When Jungkook moved again, Tae-young followed. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was instinct. Something in his blood screaming that Jungkook was hiding something, something dangerous. And those marks, they weren't normal. They weren't hickeys. They looked almost like a warning, like someone had claimed him, possessed him. As Jungkook reached the back door of the old music building, a place rarely used by students, Tae-young stopped and crouched behind the bushes. He watched as Jungkook entered the building without hesitation, glancing once over his shoulder. Their eyes met, just for a second. But in that second, something passed between them. A flicker of awareness, a silent dare. Tae-young stood slowly, brushing his coat down, his heart thudding in his chest. You know I'm following you, he muttered under his breath. And yet, you lead me here. He stepped forward, pushing the door open. Inside, the hallway was silent, empty. Dust floated in the air like ash. But Jungkook was nowhere in sight. Tae-young's eyes scanned the shadows. The silence felt too thick, too still. And then a soft creak echoed from above, from the second floor. A game had begun. Tae-young smiled, cold and sharp. Fine, he whispered. Let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes, Jeon Jungkook. Darkness swallowed him whole. Jungkook gasped, his body jerking upright, but he wasn't in the music building anymore. He was somewhere else. Home? No, not really. The walls were too quiet. The air too cold. He stood in the middle of a room soaked in red. Familiar faces lay twisted and broken across the floor, his mother's lifeless eyes staring into nothing. His father collapsed in the hallway, his sister's trembling hand reaching out, frozen forever. No, Jungkook whispered, stepping back, the floor beneath him slick and warm. Blood. It was everywhere. He fell to his knees, heart thundering like it might break apart. Please wake up, wake up, footsteps echoed behind him. Slow, measured. A shadow stretched across the room and then a figure emerged from the dark. He wore a smile that didn't reach his eyes that gleamed with something inhuman. I warned you, the stranger said softly. His voice was calm, cold. Familiar. You keep trying to run, but you'll never escape. Jungkook scrambled back, but the man knelt in front of him, cupping his chin with pale fingers that gripped like iron. You belong to me, Jungkook. No, I don't know you. But I know you, the man breathed, leaning closer. And I always get what I want. Jungkook's throat closed. His body wouldn't move. His mind screamed, but the nightmare held him tight. You're mine. Only mine, the stranger whispered. And I will have you. Even if I have to burn the world down. Then his mouth brushed Jungkook's ear. I'm already inside you. Jungkook's scream tore through the silence. After that, we see in morning, the college library Tae-young's foot creaked on the first stair. Silence, then a scream, raw, terrified. ripping through the stillness like a blade. Jungkook. Taeyoung bolted up the stairs, no longer caring about being quiet. His instincts kicked in, faster than thought, sharper than fear. Something in that voice didn't sound normal. That wasn't the scream of someone startled. It was pain, pure shattering panic. He reached the second floor and burst into the hallway, eyes scanning the rows of old practice rooms. Doors warped with age, windows fogged with time. One of them, there, the third door on the right, slightly open, darkness curling out from it like smoke. He approached, hand trembling as he pushed the door open. Inside, Jungkook lay on the floor, sweat glistening on his forehead, chest heaving, eyes wide and lost. Like he'd just woken from a nightmare too real to shake off. "Jungkook?" Taeyoung said, low and steady. No response. He knelt beside him, watching as Jungkook blinked, once, twice, before focusing on his face. "Taeyoung?" His voice cracked. Fragile, uncertain. Taeyoung's brows pulled together. "You were dreaming." Jungkook shook his head slowly. "No, it was more than that." "What did you see?" Jungkook opened his mouth, but stopped. His eyes flicked toward the far wall, where the shadows seemed to shift and tremble, as if something had been there. Watching. "I saw blood," he whispered. "My family dead, and him." Taeyoung tensed. "Him?" Jungkook looked at him then, truly looked. His voice dropped, haunted and hollow. "He said I belonged to him." For a moment silence stretched between them. Taeyoung's jaw clenched, not out of fear, but fury. He didn't know who he was. Not yet, but one thing was certain. No one touched what was his. He reached out, brushing Jungkook's damp hair from his forehead. "You're safe now," he said, but even as he said it, a chill crept down his spine, because in the corner of the room, carved faintly into the wooden wall, was a symbol. A mark, the same one from Jungkook's neck. After that, some time later, we see the calm didn't last. By noon, the campus buzzed with tension. Whispers spread like wildfire, fear clinging to every syllable. Another death. This time it was a student from the literature department, named Park Minho, quiet top of his class. Last seen walking toward the faculty building alone. Now, dead. His body was discovered near the abandoned greenhouse behind the art block, throat slashed clean, eyes wide open in horror. No blood trail, no signs of struggle. Just like the last time. Like someone had killed with precision. With purpose. After that night, Jungkook's dorm room. We see the room was silent, except for the faint hum of the heater. Jungkook lay curled under the covers, breath shallow, fingers clutching the edge of the blanket. Sleep found him, but it wasn't kind. Not tonight. Nightmare begins, a cold floor beneath his bare feet, chains rattling in the distance. A boy, smaller, thinner, and so much younger, sat on the floor, arms wrapped around his knees. The room was dim, the only light coming from a flickering bulb above, mold on the walls, the stench of dampness and blood in the air. Jungkook remembered this place. He'd tried to forget it. A door creaked open. Footsteps, heavy, cruel. "Stand up," a voice growled. The younger Jungkook looked up, eyes wide and terrified. A man entered, dressed in a long coat, face hidden behind a scarf. But his voice. "You're a lucky kid," the man said, grabbing his wrist roughly. "Someone finally offered enough for you." "No, please," Jungkook whimpered, struggling. A sharp slap across his face. "Stop crying. You're nothing but a product now. Just like your mother was." Tears streamed down his younger self's face. "You said you'd protect me." The man laughed bitterly. "I protected you long enough to make you valuable." And then the scene shifted. Blurred. Fussed. Screams. Metal doors. People staring at him like he was meat on display. Sold. Traded. Touched. And then darkness again. Only one voice remained. A whisper in his ear. "You'll never escape me. Even if the whole world forgets, I own you." End of Nightmare. Jungkook shot up in bed, gasping, sweat drenching, his shirt chest heaving. The room was dark. Safe. But it didn't feel that way. Because in the mirror across from him, for just a second, he saw the man from the nightmare. Smiling, watching, waiting.